For 20 years, my dad labeled me a mistake and worshipped my brother. At Thanksgiving, he gave me a DNA kit as a joke. Let's check if you're even mine. I took it. Weeks later, the results arrived. I sent them to the entire family. My mom collapsed. My dad froze mid-bite. Because the test revealed I was his only biological child. What if the man who relentlessly called you a mistake for 20 years, who favored your brother above all else, handed you the very weapon that would spectacularly destroy his entire world? That's what my father did to me, Caroline Mitchell, at 38 years old. For 2 decades, he treated me like a stranger, like an afterthought. But on Thanksgiving 2024, in front of 27 stunned relatives, he handed me a DNA test kit with words that still echo in my nightmares. Prove you're even my daughter. The room went silent, a suffocating silence. My mother's wine glass slipped from her shaking hand and shattered. Marcus, my brother, just left. They all thought this was just Dad's cruelest joke yet, another way to remind me I didn't belong. What none of them knew, what no one knew, was that this little test, this ultimate insult, would expose a 35-year-old secret. A secret that would cost my father everything he'd built. This is the story of how his deepest cruelty became his greatest downfall. Growing up a Mitchell meant knowing your place from day one. My father, Robert Mitchell, built his construction company from nothing into a $45 million empire, and he never, ever let anyone forget it. Mitchell and Associates? That was his true firstborn, his real legacy. I was just the daughter who arrived 3 years before his real child, my brother Marcus. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. On my 16th birthday, I got a used SAT prep book with a handwritten note. Maybe this will help you amount to something. Marcus? That same year, he got a brand new BMW just for getting his driver's license. When I graduated summa cum laude with a computer science degree from UConn, my father's glowing response was, well, at least you'll be employable. But when Marcus barely scraped by with a marketing degree from some state school, Robert threw a lavish party for 200 people, practically crowning him as the future of Mitchell and Associates. By 2024, I'd spent 15 years as a software engineer at a Fortune 500 company, building systems that saved millions in operational costs. Marcus? He'd been vice president of operations at Mitchell and Associates for 5 years, yet I never saw him successfully complete a single project without someone else stepping in to fix his mess. But in Robert's eyes, Marcus was the golden boy, building the family legacy. I was just there. Marcus is the future of Mitchell and Associates, my father would beam at every company event, his hand placed possessively on my brother's shoulder. As for Caroline, well, at least she has a steady job. The worst part wasn't just the dismissal, the constant chipping away at my worth. It was how everyone just accepted it. Relatives, friends, even my own mother. They all played along with this twisted narrative that Marcus was destined for greatness, while I was just lucky to be included at all. The company retreat in August 2023. That should have been my breaking point. I just poured my heart and soul into developing an inventory management system that would save Mitchell and Associates a whopping $2 million annually. 3 months of nights, weekends, missed family dinners, canceled plans, all because Robert said the company needed this. Then, at the retreat's gala dinner, Robert stood before 150 employees and partners, ready to make his grand announcements. First, I want to recognize the exceptional work done on our new inventory system, he began. For a fleeting second, my heart actually lifted. A sliver of hope. And then he continued, Marcus has once again proven why he's our vice president of operations. This system will revolutionize how we work. Marcus, who had literally asked me what inventory management even meant 3 weeks prior, stood up and waved to the thunderous applause. I sat there, absolutely frozen numb. My mother, Margaret, was beside me. Her hand briefly touched mine under the table, but it wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was a warning. Asterisk, stay quiet. Don't make a scene. Asterisk, later that night, fueled by a simmering rage, I cornered Marcus in the hotel bar. You know I built that entire system, I said, my voice tight. He just shrugged, taking a slow, deliberate sip of his top-shelf whiskey, naturally, charged to the company card. Dad says leadership is about delegation, he drawled. I delegated to you. That's what good executives do. You took credit for my work. I shot back. No, Caroline. I took credit for managing you well, he corrected me, that smug Mitchell smirk, identical to our father's, plastered on his face. Besides, you're not really built for the spotlight, are you? Some people are meant to be leaders. Others are meant to be reliable. Just then, my mother appeared, as if on cue, a human shield deflecting any real conflict. But instead of defending me, she just looked at me with that familiar expression I'd seen 1,000 times, something between pity and profound guilt. Let's not ruin a lovely evening, she murmured softly, though her hands trembled noticeably as she reached for her wine glass. Another moment, another injustice, swallowed whole. October 2024. That's when the news came, the news that would ultimately seal everyone's fate. Robert had called Marcus in for a meeting with James Morrison, our family's estate attorney for 2 decades. Marcus, naturally, couldn't keep his mouth shut when he had good news. He called me immediately after, practically singing into the phone. Guess who's about to be very, very wealthy, he gloated. Dad just updated his will. 85% of everything, the company, the properties, the investments, it's all going to his sole biological son. That's literally what it says, Caroline, sole biological son. He paused for dramatic effect. The remaining 15% goes to you. But here's the kicker, you can't sell your shares for 10 years. He wants to make sure you can't cash out and abandon the family legacy. The specific wording, it hit me like a cold splash of water. Sole biological son, I repeated, my mind snagging on that phrase. Morrison suggested it, Marcus rattled on, completely oblivious to my stunned tone. Something about making the will ironclad, preventing challenges from gold diggers or distant relatives. Dad loved it, said blood is what matters in the end. That evening, an email landed in my inbox from Morrison Law Firm, a courtesy copy of the will's key provisions, standard procedure for beneficiaries. There it was, in stark black and white, 85% of all assets, shares, and controlling interest in Mitchell and Associates shall transfer to my sole biological son, Marcus Mitchell. $38 million. That's what Marcus stood to inherit. My 15% would be worth about $7 million. Not nothing, sure. But that 10-year restriction? It meant I'd be forced to watch Marcus run the company into the ground, powerless to sell my shares, powerless to do anything. But that phrase, it kept gnawing at me. Sole biological son. Why not just my son, Marcus? Why the desperate emphasis on biological? November arrived, and with it, a board meeting that felt less like business and more like a coronation. Robert had invited me to attend, not as a participant, but as what he patronizingly called family support. I sat in the corner, watching him parade Marcus as his succession plan to 7 stone-faced board members. Marcus has been instrumental in our recent technological advances. Robert boomed, gesturing to the projection showing my inventory systems metrics. Under his leadership, we've saved $2 million this quarter alone. Board member Patricia Hayes, a woman who'd known me since I was 10, shot me a glance, her eyebrows raised just slightly. She knew. She knew exactly who built that system. I'd answered her technical questions about it just 2 weeks prior. But she said nothing. I propose we officially designate Marcus as CEO-elect to take over when I step down next year, Robert continued, his voice dripping with false pride. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, I overheard 2 junior executives in the break room. Did you hear? Once Marcus takes over, he's planning a full restructuring. Apparently, anyone who's not his people should start updating their resumes. What about Caroline? The other asked, almost in a whisper. Especially Caroline. Marcus told Brad she's been riding on family connections for too long. Says it's time for merit-based employment. I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Marcus, who couldn't even code a simple HTML page, talking about merit-based employment. The irony was suffocating. That night, my mother called. Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks, she said, her voice strangely flat, devoid of its usual warmth. Your father wants everyone there. The whole family, some business partners. He says he has something special planned. Special. Like Marcus's CEO announcement special? There was a long, heavy pause. Just be prepared for anything, Caroline. And maybe don't take everything so personally. But everything was about to become very, very personal. If you've ever experienced favoritism in your family, you know Thanksgiving at the Mitchell estate was always a performance. But this year felt different. 27 people gathered in a dining room straight out of Architectural Digest. Family, Robert's business partners, even Thomas Crawford, his former CFO, mysteriously fired in 1990, but still somehow in Robert's orbit. Robert stood at the head of the table, crystal glass raised, his face practically glowing with self-satisfaction. Before we feast, I want to make a toast, he boomed. To family. To blood. To legacy. His eyes found Marcus, a proud, possessive gaze. To my real son, who carries the Mitchell name forward with honor. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, those words, real son, burning into my ears. Then came the gifts. Robert, in his infinite generosity, decided to give out early Christmas presents. Marcus got a gleaming Rolex Submariner for the future CEO. Robert announced. Cousins received various expensive gadgets. Then Robert turned to me, holding a small, red-bound box. The room quieted. A hush fell. And for Caroline, he said, his voice loud, dripping with feigned concern, something I think we've all been curious about for years. I opened the box. Inside, nestled on silk, was an Ancestry DNA kit. The room went absolutely silent. Someone gasped. My mother's wine glass, already precarious, slipped from her hand, shattering with a deafening crash on the marble floor. Robert's smile was razor-sharp, predatory. Just to put all those family jokes to rest. Let's see if you're really mine, shall we? I mean, you've never quite fit in, have you? Maybe this will explain why. 27 pairs of eyes drilled into me. Marcus, unbelievably, was laughing. Oh, come on, Caroline, he drawled. It's just a joke. Unless you're worried about something. I looked at the kit. Then at Robert, his smug face. Then at my mother, frantically trying to clean up the spilled wine with shaking hands. You want me to take this test? I asked, my voice eerily calm, controlled. Robert leaned back, smug. If you're really a Mitchell, you've got nothing to hide. I stood up slowly, the DNA kit still clutched in my hand. The room held its breath. I'll take your test, I said, my voice carrying across the silent dining room, clear and firm. On one condition. Robert's smirk widened. You're hardly in a position to make conditions, Caroline. It's only fair that Marcus takes one, too, I continued, turning to my brother, my gaze unwavering. After all, if we're verifying bloodlines for the family records, shouldn't we be thorough? Marcus's laughter cut off abruptly. His face contorted. That's ridiculous. Everyone knows I'm Dad's son. I look just like him. Then you have nothing to worry about. I echoed his earlier words back to him, cold and precise. Unless you're worried about something? The room buzzed with whispers now. Some business partners looked deeply uncomfortable. Others seemed morbidly intrigued by the unfolding drama. Robert's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. This is unnecessary. Marcus doesn't need to prove anything. But I do. I asked, my voice rising slightly, challenging him in front of everyone. In front of everyone here. Either we both take the test, or I walk out right now. And you can explain to everyone why your little joke only applies to one child. Thomas Crawford, from his seat near the window, spoke up. His voice was calm, measured. Seems fair to me, Robert. What's good for one should be good for both. My mother had gone utterly pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. This isn't necessary, she stammered, her voice thin. It's Thanksgiving. We should be grateful for family. Not this. Robert looked between us, calculating. His reputation was on the line now. Backing down would make him look weak. Fine, he bit out finally. Marcus will take the test too. To prove what we all already know. Marcus shrugged, his arrogant confidence returning. Whatever. This is stupid, but fine. I held up the kit, a silent victory. One more thing, I added, my gaze fixed on Robert. The results get announced at the company gala next month. Publicly. Since you wanted to make this public, Dad, let's go all the way. The very next morning, we gathered in Robert's immaculate home office. He'd already ordered 2 more DNA kits overnight, not from some consumer ancestry site, but from GeneTech Labs, a medical-grade facility providing legal documentation. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, Robert declared, as if he'd been the one to insist on the testing all along. No room for doubt, no room for error. James Morrison, the attorney, was there as a witness, along with Patricia Hayes from the board, whom Robert had called, ironically, to ensure transparency. I, in turn, insisted on recording the entire process on my phone. Robert allowed it with a dismissive eye roll. We each swabbed our cheeks, sealed our samples, signed the chain of custody forms. Morrison notarized everything. The GeneTech instructions stated results would take 3 to 4 weeks and would include full legal documentation. Perfect timing. Robert crowed. The company gala is December 15th. We'll have the results by then. As I placed my sample in the prepaid shipping box, Marcus leaned over, a venomous whisper. You realize you're just embarrassing yourself more, right? When these come back, everyone will know Dad was right about you all along. Maybe, I replied, sealing the box with a snap. Or maybe everyone will finally know the truth. My mother, who had been eerily silent throughout the whole clinical process, suddenly spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I need to lie down. I'm not feeling well. She left the room quickly, almost fleeing, but not before I caught her reflection in the mirror by the door. Pure, unadulterated terror. That evening, she started taking anxiety medication. I know because I saw the prescription bottle on her bathroom counter when I went to check on her. Dated November 29, 2024. Something monumental, something buried for 35 years, was about to claw its way to the surface. And my mother knew exactly what it was. 3 days after we sent the tests, my mother showed up at my apartment. Unannounced. In the 5 years I'd lived there, she'd never once done that. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight, pushing past me into the living room. About the tests. You need to call the lab and cancel them. Why would I do that? I asked, my blood already running cold. She paced my small living room, wringing her hands, a nervous wreck. Some things are better left buried, Caroline. Some truths don't help anyone. Like the truth about why Dad has treated me like garbage for 20 years? I shot back, the anger bubbling up. She stopped pacing. Her eyes, those guilty, haunted eyes I knew so well, finally met mine. Your father was on a business trip in 1989. The Peterson Project in Chicago. He was gone for 3 months. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. Marcus was born in January 1990. Do the math, Caroline. I did the math. Marcus would have been conceived in April 1989. Dad was in Chicago. Yes, she confirmed, sinking onto my couch, defeated. But Thomas Crawford wasn't. Thomas Crawford. Robert's former CFO. The man who'd been at Thanksgiving dinner. The one who'd subtly supported my suggestion that Marcus take a test too. Him? You and Crawford? I whispered, disbelief warring with a dawning, terrible understanding. She pulled an old, faded photograph from her purse. Her and Crawford at some company function, standing closer than mere colleagues should. It only happened once, she confessed, her voice thick with shame. I was lonely. Robert was always gone, always at the office. Thomas was kind to me. But then, I found out I was pregnant. And the timing. Robert never questioned it. Marcus looked enough like him, acted like him. Does Crawford know? I asked, my mind reeling. I don't know. Maybe he suspects. He's never said anything. She grabbed my hands, her grip desperate. Please, Caroline. Cancel the tests. I'll talk to your father. I'll make him treat you better. Just please, please, don't destroy our family. But I didn't cancel the tests. How could I? 20 years of being called a mistake, of being constantly dismissed, and now I finally understood why my mother had never, ever defended me. Her guilt had kept her silent, complicit, while Robert systematically destroyed my self-worth day by painful day. December arrived, and with it, preparations for the company's 25th anniversary gala. It was going to be a huge event at the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom on December 15th. 350 guests, including investors, partners, and even journalists from the Hartford Business Journal. Robert, as always, was broadcasting his plans to anyone who'd listen. "It's going to be the event of the year," he announced to me at a mandatory family dinner, a glint in his eye. "I'll be announcing Marcus as my official successor, and we'll put those silly DNA questions to rest once and for all." Two birds, one stone. The DNA results were due December 14th. Dr. Sarah Smith from GeneTech Labs had confirmed via email that they'd be ready, complete with full legal documentation suitable for court proceedings if needed. Court proceedings? I'd asked her during our phone call. "It's standard for inheritance or custody disputes," she'd explained. "Your father specifically requested the legal package when he called to upgrade the testing." Of course he had. Robert wanted ironclad proof that I wasn't his, probably to justify writing me out of the will entirely. But while they waited for their truth, I spent those weeks preparing something of my own. A simple PowerPoint presentation, just 10 slides, nothing fancy. Just spaces for the test results, highlighted sections of the will, and a few email screenshots. I saved it all to a USB drive, a tiny, powerful weapon that stayed in my pocket at all times. My mother called 17 times in those 2 weeks. I didn't answer once. Marcus sent cocky texts about practicing his CEO speech. Robert sent a condescending reminder to dress appropriately for the gala. The storm was coming, and they had absolutely no idea they had created it themselves. December 14th, 3 p.m. The email from GeneTech Labs landed in my inbox. I was in my office, supposedly working, but really just staring at the screen, refreshing every 30 seconds, my stomach churning. Subject: DNA test results. Legal documentation package attached. My hands shook as I opened the PDF. 3 test results, each with its own detailed breakdown. The first, Caroline Mitchell, biological daughter of Robert Mitchell. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. My heart stopped. Just for a moment. I am his daughter. Then I scrolled to the next page. Marcus Mitchell, not biologically related to Robert Mitchell. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. My breath hitched. But it was the third page that made me gasp out loud, a sharp, disbelieving sound. Marcus Mitchell, biological son of Thomas Crawford. Probability of paternity, 99.991%. They'd run Marcus's sample against Crawford's DNA from their commercial database. Apparently, he'd taken a genetic ancestry test years ago, agreeing to terms that allowed his DNA to be used for family matching. I read the results 5 times. Not because I didn't believe them, but because suddenly, everything clicked. Everything made sense. The guilt in my mother's eyes. Robert's relentless insistence that I wasn't really his. He'd been projecting his own subconscious doubts about Marcus onto me for 2 decades. The irony was so exquisite, so utterly perfect, it felt like fiction. The son he'd worshipped, groomed, handed everything to on a silver platter? Not his. While the daughter he'd tortured, dismissed, and tried to humiliate with a DNA test. I was his only biological child. I immediately forwarded the results to my personal attorney with one burning question. Given the will's language about sole biological son, what happens to the inheritance? Her response was instant, electrifying. If proven accurate, Marcus inherits nothing. The clause becomes void. As the only biological child, you would have grounds to contest the entire will. Tomorrow's gala was about to become very, very interesting. I spent the rest of December 14th crafting my presentation with surgical precision. 10 slides that would dismantle 20 years of lies in 10 minutes. Slide 1. A photo of our family at last year's gala. Robert's arm around Marcus. Me, a blurry afterthought, barely in frame. Slide 2. The title, DNA results as requested by Robert Mitchell. Slides 3 through 5. My results, blown up, huge, clear enough for the back of the ballroom to read. Every percentage highlighted. The GeneTech Labs logo prominent. Dr. Smith's certification undeniable. Slides 6 through 8. Marcus's results. The 0% probability of Robert's paternity in massive 72-point font. Then, the Crawford match, equally enlarged. Slide 9. The will's exact language, sole biological son, highlighted in venomous yellow. Slide 10. An email from James Morrison, sent an hour ago after I'd forwarded him the results. Based on these certified results, the inheritance clause regarding Marcus Mitchell would be legally void. The estate would need to be redistributed according to intestate succession laws, or the will would need to be rewritten. I also prepared backup documentation, the full GeneTech report, the video of our sample collection, the notarized chain of custody forms, everything loaded onto 3 separate USB drives and backed up to the cloud. At 11 p.m., I sent an email to Patricia Hayes and 3 other keyboard members. My message was curt, compelling. Please attend tomorrow's gala. There will be an important announcement regarding the company's future leadership that directly affects shareholder interests. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and practiced my speech one last time. This isn't about revenge, I whispered to my reflection, my voice steady. This is about truth. This is about justice. This is about finally getting what I deserve. Tomorrow, the Mitchell dynasty would crumble. And I would be the only Mitchell left standing. December 14th, midnight. My phone, which I'd briefly turned back on, was a frenzy. 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from Marcus. None from Robert. The text scrolled, Caroline, please answer. We need to talk. I know you got the results. Please. Don't do this. From Marcus. Why is Mom crying? She won't tell me what's wrong. This is about tomorrow, isn't it? Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Dad says you're just jealous. Pathetic. I turned the phone off again. Sleep wouldn't come. My mind replayed every dismissive comment, every stolen achievement, every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough, wasn't really family, wasn't worthy of the Mitchell name. At 3 a.m., I got up. I looked at the presentation one more time. For a moment, just a fleeting moment, I considered my mother's desperate plea. This would destroy her marriage. Marcus's entire identity. Robert's carefully constructed legacy. Then I remembered last year's Christmas, when Robert had given Marcus a luxury watch and me, a Target gift card. I remembered him telling investors I was just the IT help after I'd saved his company $2 million. I remembered 20 years of being called a mistake. I added one final slide to the presentation. A quote, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing Greenwich in a pristine, deceptive white. By tomorrow night, everything would be different. The Mitchell family, as we knew it, would cease to exist. I finally fell asleep at 5 a.m., clutching that USB drive like a talisman, ready for the reckoning that had been 20 years in the making. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered, a dazzling showcase of Christmas decorations and the who's who of Connecticut's construction industry. 350 guests mingled, sipping champagne, nibbling caviar, celebrating Mitchell and Associates' 25 years of supposed success. I arrived in a classic black cocktail dress, appropriate, understated, exactly what Robert would expect. He'd predictably seated me at table 12, in the back corner, with distant relatives and plus ones. Marcus, naturally, held court at the VIP table, flanked by Robert, my mother, and the entire board. At 8 p.m. sharp, Robert took the stage, commanding attention in his custom tuxedo. 25 years ago, he boomed, his voice resonating with manufactured humility. I started this company with nothing but ambition and the determination to build a legacy. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that legacy will continue through my son, Marcus Mitchell. Applause, thunderous and automatic, filled the room. Marcus stood, waving like a seasoned politician, his smile broad and confident. Family, Robert continued, his gaze sweeping the room, is everything. Blood is thicker than water. And Marcus is my blood, my heir, my future. I noticed Thomas Crawford at table 3, his expression unreadable as he watched Robert's performance. Before I officially announce Marcus as CEO-elect, Robert said, his eyes finally finding me, way in the back, I want to address something. As many of you know, we recently did some family DNA testing. A little Thanksgiving fun that got out of hand, perhaps. But I'm happy to report that all questions about our family tree have been answered. My hand moved instinctively to the USB drive in my purse. So, without further ado, actually, I said, my voice cutting across the ballroom, clear and surprisingly strong. I stood up. I'd like to share those DNA results with everyone. Every head in the room swiveled towards me. Robert's smile flickered, a glitch in his carefully constructed facade, but held. I'm sure that's not necessary, Caroline, he said, his voice now laced with a warning. I began walking. Past 25 tables of stunned guests, my heels clicking a deliberate rhythm against the marble floor. Each step felt like a mile, but my shoulders were back, my head held high. May I? I gestured towards the laptop connected to the massive LED screens flanking the stage. Robert's jaw tightened. Caroline, this is neither the time nor. You made it the time, I interrupted, my voice loud enough for the entire room to hear, when you gave me that DNA kit in front of everyone. You wanted answers, Dad. I have them. Marcus laughed from his table, a harsh, dismissive sound. This is desperate, even for you. But then Patricia Hayes, from the board table, spoke up. Let her speak, Robert. You did make this public at Thanksgiving. Several of us were there. Trapped by his own arrogance, Robert stepped aside. 5 minutes, Caroline. Then security will escort you out. My hands were steady as I plugged in my USB drive, despite the frantic drumming of my heart. The first slide appeared, our family photo. Robert's arm around Marcus. Me barely visible. For 20 years, I began, my voice clear and unwavering. I've been told I'm not really a Mitchell. That I'm a mistake. That I don't belong. I clicked to the next slide, DNA results, as requested by Robert Mitchell. So, let's see who really belongs in this family. The room was utterly silent, save for the hum of the projector. Remember that DNA kit you gave me as a joke? I looked directly at Robert, my gaze piercing. Remember insisting Marcus take one too, to prove he's your real son? My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. Caroline, please. The results came in yesterday, I continued, clicking to slide 3. My results. Blown up. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. Turns out, I am definitely Robert Mitchell's biological daughter. A collective gasp rippled through the room. But that's not the interesting part, I said, clicking to the next slide. Marcus's results filled the screens. Marcus Mitchell, not biologically related to Robert Mitchell. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. It might as well have been written in fire. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping as people stood for a better view. Robert stood frozen at the side of the stage, his face draining of all color, ghostly white. That's fake. Marcus shrieked, jumping to his feet. This is fabricated. She's lying. I clicked again. The next slide, Marcus's match with Thomas Crawford. 99.991%. Thomas Crawford slowly stood from his seat at table 3. His face was a mask of shock, yes, but also something else. Recognition. The pieces, after 35 years, were finally falling into place. My mother collapsed back into her chair, her hand clamped over her mouth. She didn't faint, as I'd half expected. She just sat there, tears streaming silently down her face. The secret she'd carried for so long, finally, brutally exposed. According to the will Robert signed in October, I clicked to the next slide, showing the highlighted text, 85% of everything goes to his sole biological son. The final slide appeared, Morrison's email confirmation. But Robert doesn't have a biological son, I stated, my voice ringing with triumph. He has a biological daughter. Me. The mistake. The disappointment. The one who supposedly never belonged. Robert finally found his voice, a ragged croak. This can't be. The lab made an error. Gene Tech Labs doesn't make errors, a calm voice interjected. Dr. Sarah Smith, from Table 7, stood. I hadn't known she'd be there, but Patricia Hayes, in her brilliance, had apparently invited her. I supervised these tests personally. I ran them 3 times to be certain. The results are accurate. The Hartford Business Journal photographer was frantically snapping pictures. Board members huddled, their whispers heated and urgent. And Marcus? Marcus looked like his entire world had just imploded, because it had. This is a setup. Marcus screamed, pushing through the stunned crowd towards the stage. She paid someone off. This isn't real. Dr. Smith walked to the microphone, radiating calm authority. I'm Dr. Sarah Smith, Director of Genetic Services at Gene Tech Labs. I stake my professional reputation on these results. We maintained strict chain of custody, which was witnessed and notarized by Mr. James Morrison. Morrison, looking incredibly uncomfortable, reluctantly stood. The sample collection was properly witnessed and documented. I have the video evidence and signed forms. Furthermore, Dr. Smith continued, Mr. Crawford's DNA was already in our database from a test he took 3 years ago. The match with Marcus Mitchell was discovered through our standard relative matching protocol. Patricia Hayes rose from the board table, her gaze firm, unwavering. Robert, given this information, we need to convene an emergency board meeting. Tonight. You can't do this. Robert's composure finally, completely cracked. This company is mine. Marcus is my son. I raised him. You raised him, I agreed, still at the microphone, but he's not your biological son. And, according to your own will, that's all that matters. Your words, Dad. Not mine. I pulled out my phone and held it up, displaying the email I'd sent to the board just 5 minutes before taking the stage. The full Gene Tech report, the video evidence, everything. The board has all the documentation, I announced. So does the Hartford Business Journal, as of. I checked my phone 30 seconds ago. Marcus lunged towards me, but security, the same security Robert had threatened to use on me, intercepted him. You destroyed everything. Marcus screamed, thrashing as they held him back. You vindictive, I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly, meeting his furious gaze. I just told the truth. The DNA test was your father's idea, remember? Robert grabbed the microphone, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped it. This changes nothing. I'm still the CEO. I'm still the majority shareholder. Actually, Patricia Hayes cut in, having just finished a hushed phone call, her voice slicing through the chaos. The board has voted. 7-2. You're temporarily suspended, pending a full investigation into potential fraud regarding the misrepresentation of company leadership succession. Robert stared at her, aghast. You can't. We can, and we did, Patricia continued, unflappable. You've been grooming someone with no legitimate claim to the company while overlooking your actual heir. Our shareholders could sue us into oblivion. Robert spun to my mother, who still sat frozen at the VIP table, tears silently streaming. Margaret, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. She stood slowly, painfully, her voice barely audible even with the microphone. It's true. All of it. Thomas and I, it was just once. I'm so sorry. The room exploded again. Thomas Crawford was immediately surrounded by a swarm of people, questions flying. Marcus had to be physically restrained from charging at Crawford, screaming, you knew. You had to have known. The lawyers will sort this out, Robert said desperately, clutching the microphone, a broken man. The will can be contested. On what grounds, Dad? I asked, my voice cold, lethal. You specified biological son. You insisted on DNA tests. You created this entire situation entirely on your own. I turned to address the room one final time. For 20 years, this man told me I was worthless. That I didn't deserve the Mitchell name. He built his golden boy up on a foundation of lies, while tearing me down with what he thought was the truth. But the real truth is poetic justice. Security began escorting a still shouting Marcus out, his threats and profanities echoing. Robert stood alone on the stage, his empire crumbling around him, finally understanding what it felt like to be the one who didn't belong. The emergency board meeting convened in the hotel's conference room at 10 p.m. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but Patricia Hayes, with a knowing glint in her eye, insisted I attend as the only legitimate Mitchell heir present. The vote was swift, brutal, and decisive. Robert was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Marcus's position as vice president? Terminated, with 2 weeks standard severance, the absolute minimum required by law. We need stable leadership, Patricia announced, addressing the board. Someone who understands the company and has proven competence. Then came the shocker. The board unanimously appoints Caroline Mitchell as interim CEO. I blinked. Interim CEO, my mind raced. I hadn't expected that. I'm not sure I'm ready. You built the system that saved us $2 million. Board member William Chin interrupted, his voice sharp. You have an engineering degree and 15 years of corporate experience. You're more qualified than Marcus ever was. James Morrison, bless his efficient heart, had already drawn up the emergency paperwork. Based on the DNA results and the will's specific language, he stated formally, the 85% controlling interest transfers to you immediately. The remaining 15% stays with Robert until divorce proceedings determine otherwise. Within 48 hours, I would control $38 million in assets. Robert, who had remained eerily silent during these proceedings, finally spoke, his voice hoarse. You planned this. You orchestrated everything. No, I said simply, calmly. You did, Dad. I just took the test you demanded. The truth did the rest. As we signed the papers, Patricia pulled me aside. Your father built something impressive here, Caroline. But he let his ego poison it. Don't make the same mistake. I won't, I assured her, my gaze firm. I'm not interested in dynasties or golden children. I just want to run a good company. Security briefed me on the building's access codes. Roberts had already been deactivated. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into Mitchell and Associates, not as the disappointment daughter, but as the owner. The reversal was complete. By morning, the story had gone viral. Mitchell dynasty crumbles. DNA test reveals shocking family secret, blared the Hartford Business Journal's lead story. Someone had leaked the video of my presentation. Within 48 hours, it had 2.3 million views and climbing. The comment sections were brutal, but mostly aimed at Robert, poetic justice at its finest. He literally asked for this. Imagine being so arrogant you destroy your own legacy with a DNA test. Robert's LinkedIn profile hemorrhaged followers, 15,000 lost in a week. Marcus's professional reputation was destroyed overnight. Screenshots of his past posts bragging about being the heir apparent became instant memes. The business impact for Mitchell and Associates was immediate and measurable. 3 major clients who'd been considering leaving due to Marcus's incompetence renewed their contracts when they heard about the leadership change. Stock value increased 8% in my first week. I gave one brief interview to the Hartford Business Journal, keeping it professional. This company was built on hard work and innovation, I stated. We're returning to those values. The drama is over. Now we focus on business. But the media wouldn't let it go. The DNA test that destroyed a dynasty became a trending topic. Reddit threads dissected every angle. Someone even started a podcast about family business scandals, with our story as the inaugural episode. Thomas Crawford, through his lawyer, released a statement. I was unaware of Marcus's parentage until the DNA results were revealed. I am willing to take responsibility and want to establish a relationship with my son, if he is willing. Marcus's response, posted on Instagram before his account went private, I don't need any of you. I'll build my own empire. The empire he'd been handed was gone. The empire he'd built himself remained to be seen. My mother finally told the whole, agonizing truth during our first conversation after the gala. We met at a quiet coffee shop, neutral ground, far away from the ruins of the Mitchell estate. Your father was never home, she said, staring into her latte, her voice hollow. The Chicago project, then Denver, then Houston. Thomas was kind. He listened. One night, after a company dinner where Robert had called to cancel again, it just happened. Did Crawford know? I asked, needing to understand. I think he suspected when Marcus was born 6 weeks early, but fully developed, she confessed. He never said anything. Robert never questioned it. Marcus looked enough like him. Everyone said so. The divorce was swift, brutal. Connecticut's adultery laws meant my mother forfeited significant assets. She walked away with $12 million less than she would have received otherwise. Robert lost the house, half his remaining assets, and every shred of his reputation. Marcus, predictably, filed a lawsuit against me for intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming I deliberately destroyed his life. The judge dismissed it in 5 minutes. The plaintiff's father initiated the DNA testing. The defendant simply revealed the results. Case dismissed. Marcus refused all of Crawford's attempts at contact. He also refused the entry-level position Crawford offered at his investment firm, the only job anyone would offer him. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Stamford, selling insurance. "I'm so sorry," my mother said during that coffee meeting, her eyes brimming with tears. "For everything. For not protecting you. For letting my guilt keep me silent while Robert hurt you." "I know," I said, and I did know. But knowing and forgiving were two very different things. Can we try to rebuild something?" she asked, her voice fragile. "Maybe," I told her. "But not now. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not the family disappointment." Mitchell and Associates, under my leadership, became what it should have always been, a true meritocracy. I hired a new executive team based solely on competence, not connections. Half were women, a third were people of color, and all were brilliant. The inventory management system I developed was finally implemented properly, saving the projected $2 million annually. But more importantly, I instituted transparent attribution. Everyone's contributions were documented, credited. First quarter 2025 results spoke for themselves. Profits up 23%, employee satisfaction up 45%, and 3 major contracts secured that Robert had lost due to Marcus's bungling. The Hartford Business Journal ran a follow-up piece, From DNA Drama to Corporate Success, Caroline Mitchell's Transformation of Mitchell and Associates. I promoted Janet Rodriguez, who'd been Marcus's assistant and had actually done all his work, to Vice President of Operations. "You've been doing the job for 5 years, Janet," I told her. "It's time you got the title and salary." The company culture shifted dramatically. The fear-based hierarchy Robert had cultivated was replaced with collaborative innovation. People stopped whispering in corridors and started speaking up in meetings. One of our biggest wins came from landing the Riverside Development Project, a $30 million contract Robert had been chasing for 3 years. The client told me directly, "We were waiting for the leadership to change. We knew Marcus would ruin it, but we also knew you were the one really running things behind the scenes." During a company town hall, an employee asked how it felt to go from the shadows to the spotlight. "Like finally being able to breathe," I answered. "Honestly, this company was built on one man's ego. Now it's built on everyone's talent. That's why we're succeeding." The Mitchell name stayed on the building, but it meant something different now. Robert's attempts to reclaim his life ranged from pathetic to desperate. The email started 2 weeks after the gala. "Caroline, I realize I was wrong. You're the best daughter a father could ask for. Please, let's talk. I built this company from nothing. You can't just erase me. Finally, I'm your father. That has to count for something." He even tried entering the building one morning, but security turned him away. The footage of him arguing with the guards, insisting he owned the company, somehow made it onto social media, another humiliation in his growing collection. He hired 3 different law firms to challenge the will and the DNA results. Each case was dismissed. Morrison, his own lawyer for 20 years, testified that the will's language was clear and unambiguous, and that Robert himself had insisted on the biological son clause. The most pathetic attempt came when he showed up at a client dinner I was hosting. "My daughter's doing a wonderful job with my company," he announced to the table, trying to insert himself into the conversation. "Sir, this is a private event," security informed him politely. "I'm her father. You're not on the list, sir." He ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, a 45-minute drive from the estate he'd once ruled. His LinkedIn profile listed him as consultant, with no company attached. His posts about resilience and rising from setbacks got fewer likes each time. Marcus had cut him off completely. My mother was gone. His business associates avoided him. The man who'd built his entire identity on legacy and blood had lost both. "I gave you everything," he wrote in his last email to me. I didn't respond. We both knew the truth. He'd given me nothing but pain. And in trying to prove I was nothing, he'd proven I was everything. 3 months after the gala, I agreed to meet Robert once a month. Lunch. In a public place. With clear boundaries. "These are my terms," I told him at that first meeting. "You don't get to comment on my decisions. You don't get to take credit for my success. You don't get to pretend the past 20 years didn't happen. If you can't handle that, we don't meet at all." He'd aged 5 years in those 3 months. His hair completely gray. His arrogant swagger replaced with a slight stoop. "I understand," he muttered. Marcus was a different story. After sending threatening messages like, "You'll pay for this," and "I'll destroy you like you destroyed me," I filed a restraining order. He was blocked on everything, legally prohibited from contacting me. My mother? She got limited contact with conditions. I helped her find a therapist specializing in family trauma and secret keeping. She was working through 35 years of guilt. And I was working through 20 years of neglect. "Forgiveness isn't a right," my therapist told me. "It's a gift, and you get to decide if and when to give it." I established the Caroline Mitchell Foundation for Women in STEM, funded with $5 million from my inheritance. Every scholarship recipient would know they were supported by someone who understood what it felt like to be overlooked and underestimated. "Why are you helping him?" Patricia Hayes asked about my monthly lunches with Robert. "I'm not helping him," I clarified. "I'm choosing to be the person I want to be, regardless of who he was." "But trust? That has to be earned from zero." And he's still in the negative. The boundaries were clear, firm, non-negotiable. For the first time in my life, I was in control of my relationships with my family. The external success was measurable. CEO of a $45 million company, respected in the industry, featured in Forbes 40 Under 40. But the internal transformation mattered more. I started therapy the week after the gala, meticulously working through 2 decades of gaslighting and emotional abuse. "You were the family scapegoat," my therapist explained. "Everything wrong was your fault. Everything right was someone else's achievement. That's not normal, and it's not okay." For the first time, I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped prefacing my ideas with "this might be stupid, but..." I stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I met Daniel at a charity fundraiser. He ran a nonprofit for youth coding education. He knew my story, everyone did, but he was interested in who I was now, not my family drama. "You're brilliant," he said on our 3rd date. "And I'm not talking about the company or the money. You see solutions where others see problems." The Caroline Mitchell Foundation launched with 30 scholarships in its first year. Each recipient received not just money, but mentorship. I personally met with every single one. They told me I wasn't smart enough for engineering, one recipient, Maria, told me. My family said I should study something more suitable for women. Mine said I was a mistake, I shared. Now I run a $45 million company. Don't let anyone else define your worth. The nightmares stopped after 6 months. The anxiety attacks after 8. The constant need for validation after 10. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of judgment, not of failure, not of being not good enough. I was Caroline Mitchell, CEO, philanthropist, survivor. And for the first time in 38 years, that was exactly who I wanted to be. Standing in my CEO office 1 year later, I looked at the old family photo on my desk, not with bitterness, but with a profound understanding. That scared, diminished girl in the corner of the frame had no idea what she was capable of. The DNA test that was meant to humiliate me had instead freed me. It proved that blood doesn't define family, but it can certainly expose the lies we build our lives on. Robert had been so certain I wasn't his, that he'd projected that doubt onto me for 20 years, all while never questioning the son who actually wasn't his. "Your father gave you a gift," my therapist had said. Not intentionally, but he did. He showed you exactly who he was, publicly, undeniably. No more gaslighting, no more doubt. The truth set you free. The truth also taught me that when toxic people hand you a weapon, thinking it will destroy you, they often don't realize they're handing you the key to your own freedom. Robert's cruelty became my catalyst. His DNA test became my evidence. His public humiliation became my public vindication. But the most important lesson? Justice isn't revenge. It's finally getting what you always deserved. I didn't destroy Robert. He destroyed himself with his own arrogance. I just refused to keep his secrets anymore. Thank you for the DNA kit, Dad, I whispered to the photo, then placed it face down in my desk drawer. It was the best investment you ever made in me. The Mitchell empire Robert built on blood and favoritism was gone. In its place stood something stronger, a company built on merit, a leader who earned her position, and a woman who finally knew her worth. The mistake had become the only true Mitchell. And that truly was the greatest irony of all. This journey was long, and it was hard, but ultimately, it was about finding my own voice and my own worth. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between keeping a painful family secret or fighting for your own truth? What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. I truly want to hear your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories of justice, courage, and finding your own power. Thank you for watching.